Have you had trouble with online dating? This is eHarmony founder Dr. Neil Clark Warren. We've created a new solution, EH Plus. EH Plus combines the personal attention of a matchmaker with eHarmony's extensive pool of great singles. EH Plus gives you hand-selected matches and freedom from being online. Get started today. Call 855-930-LOVE. That's 855-930-LOVE.
Consider this your invitation to sell. At buysellmakeoffer.com, you can sell as much as you want for the next 60 days without paying any fees whatsoever. Sound incredible? It is, and it's true. Buysellmakeoffer.com is the new exciting way to sell your stuff online. Make extra money right now. Sell your old car, furniture, video games, household items, clothes, even your home. Sell anything that's legal. Load up your stuff to sell right now at buysellmakeoffer.com. This is your official invitation to get on board to sell your stuff right now. Free for the next 60 days. And once you see how easy it is, you'll want to sign up for more because there are no item fees. That's right. Take this opportunity to move items from the other guys and sell it for free. You might even win a Samsung tablet, Amazon gift cards, and other cool prizes. BuySellMakeOffer.com is the future of online selling. You can use Skype to talk to your buyer or seller. Plus, you can use video to showcase your items. BuySellMakeOffer.com.
As the owner of my business, I wear a lot of hats. I'm accounting, sales, and so much more. But I don't know marketing.
Let Dex Media be your marketing department. Our team can create a digital plan for you with everything from search to social. Contact Dex Media, that's DEX Media, to get found, get chosen, and get talked about.
Whoa, that's a job for cleanup, which would be me.
Call 844-230-3436 or visit dexmedia.com today.
What have I learned so far? I've learned that dropping out of high school was my decision. But as a single mom, that decision affected more than just me. To set an example, I had to be the example. I found a free high school diploma program at Learn for Life that fits around my busy life. I have a team of teachers, tutors, and counselors that really care. I learn at my pace in an environment that is safe and comfortable. What have I learned so far? I've learned that I can change my life.
Are you 14 to 19 years old and looking for a free high school diploma program with flexible meeting times? This program allows you to keep your job or important family responsibilities while earning your high school diploma. If you've fallen behind on credits or dropped out of school completely, get back on track with free tutoring, a caring faculty, and one-on-one attention. For more information on how to reach your graduation goal, visit learnforlife.org. That's LEARN, the number 4, LIFE.org. Or enroll today by calling 877-360-LEARN. That's 877-360-LEARN.
From the Kcaa Weather Center, I'm Tom Ladd. For this afternoon, it'll be sunny with the high near 93. Light and variable wind out of the west at 5 to 10 in the afternoon. Patchy fog after 11 p.m. tonight. Otherwise, partly cloudy with low around 62. For Wednesday, patchy fog before 11 a.m. Otherwise, mostly sunny and a high near 92. Fog after 11 p.m. Wednesday night. Otherwise, increasing clouds, low around 61 degrees. That's your weather forecast for this hour from the station that leaves no listener behind. NBC News Radio, AM 1050, KCAA.
Welcome to Relationships 2.0. I'm Michelle Skeen. My special guest today is Laura Hannes Webb. She is the author of The Gift of Adult ADD, How to Transform Your Challenges and Build on Your Strengths. Welcome.
Oh, it's great to be here, Michelle. Thank you.
Oh, it's great to have you. First of all, I want to say that I really enjoyed your book and you through your book because I feel like we share the same perspective about looking at the positive things and coming from a wellness model versus a disease model.
Yeah, thank you for that.
And I think that makes such a difference in the message that you're communicating in your book.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I definitely, feel like I want to get that message out, to the 11% of children in the U.S. that are diagnosed with ADHD and more than 5% of adults now diagnosed with ADHD.
So let's get started first with just laying the groundwork in terms of the diagnosis and everything, because even if people aren't diagnosed with ADD or ADHD, everyone's always like, "Oh, I'm so ADD," and it's a common phrase these days. But I don't know that everyone really understands what it means and what the criteria is for an official diagnosis. So maybe you can just give us the definition of that.
Well, thank you. This is really a great point. When I think of ADHD, there's three main clusters, and I guess I should actually attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is what ADHD means. And the three clusters are difficulty concentrating, also hyperactivity, and impulsivity. And so in order to get a diagnosis, I recommend a gold standard interview. It's not enough to walk into a psychiatrist and have a 30-minute conversation and have a diagnosis. So what does inattention look like? It's people who make careless mistakes, difficulty sustaining attention, not listening, not following through on instructions. Hyperactivity is fidgeting and squirming, shifting around, restlessness, difficulty engaging in leisure activities, being on the go. And impulsivity is blurting out answers, having difficulty waiting your turn, interrupting others. So those are the basic symptoms, but I recommend a pretty thorough interview, getting collateral information, and also, of course, ruling out alternative diagnoses.
So what might some of those be?
Well, I think the younger the child, the more difficult it is to make the diagnosis, because anxiety makes it difficult to pay attention. Stress makes it difficult to pay attention. Depression looks a lot like ADHD. And by the way, this is all true for adults, but the younger a child is, the less they can use their language to differentiate what's really going on inside of them.
Right. So this book, The Gift of Adult ADD, you say that the reason that since this is a book for adults, that you use ADD instead of ADHD is that often in adults, the hyperactivity component isn't present anymore.
Yeah, it's probably more fair to say that it kind of decreases over time. I mean, it's like the older you get, the more responsibilities you have, some of your natural energy declines, and you may have a lot of different areas to spread that energy. So yeah, that's fair to say.
And also, it seems as if maybe the problems in terms of that hyperactivity piece in adulthood are probably a lot relational, right? Someone who, we've all been with people who seem like they're really kind of not paying attention to you while you're talking, right?
Right, exactly. And that can create a lot of problems in relationships and impairments. If people can't listen, or if they're so hyperactive, they can't, be present with you.
Right. So that's a big piece too. So one of the things that I wanted to that you bring up in the book that is so, just is so important, and I love so much, is that this really can be devastating to an individual's self-esteem.
Of course. Let's say it out loud. Deficit disorder. And if you define yourself by
you're
that,
not good enough.
Yeah. It's adding insult to injury. It's so people feel that they're not capable of making, their goals come true. They feel that other people have an advantage over them. And so you're right. Their self-concept, their self-confidence really takes a hit.
And so rather than focusing, as so often people do, on what isn't present, like what they're lacking, you really have the reader focus on what their strengths are, because everyone has them. I mean, this is such an important reminder that everyone has strengths. I mean, as we all have weaknesses, whether it's ADD or something else, but that this focus on the strengths is so important, and the way you take the reader through it. So can you talk about why this was so important for you to focus on that, rather than, it just feels to me like the book is a lot less about, okay, let's look at these problems you have.
Right. And so let's just talk results first. Just by finding and focusing on gifts, people change in positive and noticeable ways. They feel better about themselves. They have improved confidence and motivation. And if you don't talk about the gifts, people believe that they have a disorder and it's negative and it's confusing. They feel like they're not in control of their behavior, and that creates its own set of problems. They can't control their thoughts, they believe, and they feel like that diagnosis becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And, it's like you get what you focus on, right? And so the more you focus on what's wrong with you, then you're creating a negative cycle for yourself.
One of the things a lot of times, and I love this too, like in school, when kids are in school, like they have to take certain classes. There's no way around it. They're not picking, this is what you have to take. And so it tends to highlight things they're not good at. And one of the things that you say about being an adult with ADD is, okay, now you're out in the world, you can actually focus on things that you are good at. Again, this idea of focusing on your strengths.
Yeah, and I think that's in some ways the cure for ADHD, and why for so long we thought that people outgrew ADHD was because hopefully an ADHD person will find something that they're really good at. A great example of that is I interviewed a fire chief. And I remember him saying, the greatest joy I have is standing on the roof of a burning building in the middle of a hailstorm. Okay, how could a person who has that sort of a feeling sit in a classroom for any period of time? So think about it. And it's an example of you can use your gift in a completely different way that has nothing to do with what's happening in a classroom.
I'm losing you a little bit. You're breaking up.
So I'm talking about a fire chief who, loves, emergencies. And he also said that breaking rules is the way that we achieve things. If you have a fire, you have to break down a door. You have to do things that other people aren't allowed to do. So for him, breaking rules was a part of his life. And of course, that's exactly what gets people in trouble at school.
Right. Yeah. One of the things that was also really interesting to me was why there is an increase in people being diagnosed with this. I mean, we know that medication enhances performance with anyone, right? So that's not the test.
Yeah, that's right. So, there's been a lot of research that they found that the majority of students in colleges are using some of the medications in ADHD. They're getting it from other people because they know that it enhances performance, and that can increase the desire for people to get a diagnosis.
I have a girlfriend who told me that her son begged her during high school to take him in so he could get the medication, because he said he was the only one in his class at this private school who wasn't taking the medication. So he's having to perform as like a normal person against these people who are on these performance-enhancing drugs.
This is a very real issue. And, I've often wondered about that. As these numbers increase, we have 11% of school children, then, that other people will feel like they're at a disadvantage. And if those numbers keep going up, that puts pressure on other people.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's also easy with the current tests because it's not like a blood test, right? Where, this person has this. So it's really easy. I've seen the exams to just fake fake that you have the problem, right? Oh, do you have difficulty concentrating? I do have difficulty concentrating. I mean, the fact of the matter is, especially with all of the technology, I'm wondering, and you touch on this in your book, is this the thing that's causing us to be so distracted? And for kids to be so distracted. Last week I was in Jackson, Wyoming with my kids, and we were on a hike in, chapter 6 of your book, Nature. And it was so fabulous, and we were having such a great time. And we started talking about, like, what is it going to be like for kids in like even 10 years? Are 1-year-olds just going to be on iPads all the time? How is it's so crazy to imagine, because already there are so many distractions and technologies becoming a part of a child's life so much earlier. My kids are old enough that they didn't really have that until they were in middle school. But what about kids who are getting it really young?
Well, I actually tell my clients all the time that I look them in the eyes and I say, this technology is an experiment with your brain, because this, for example, the iPhone's only about 10 years old. And yet these kids have it in the palm of their hand. They can access the internet, entertainment all day, every day.
Yeah.
And so that this is an experiment with your brain. And here's what we know, that this exposure can disrupt your sleep. And we also know that sleep is the foundation of mental health. We also know that, what are you doing with all this time? It's very typical for me to ask my clients, how many hours a day are you playing video games? I hear 5 hours. How many days are you watching TV shows? 3 hours. So, imagine that. That's 8 hours a day in front of a screen. And I don't think those are the people that even qualify as the addicts, the technology addicts that you're finding in other places. So what we're having here is an experiment with people's brains, and I personally think that there's going to be some negative consequences to that. Also, in terms of the standards that people have for how much work it takes to do well in school. Again, if you're spending 8 hours a day in front of a screen, what are you not doing? You're not getting exercise. You're not out in nature, as we talked about. You're not studying. You're not socializing. Although, of course, some games are multiplayer, and that has some social element to it. So I'm very concerned about that, and I think you're exactly right. It contributes to the diagnosis of ADHD.
So a lot of these people who think they have it are just maybe more sensitive to the overwhelm of all of the technology and information that is available to us.
Well, yes, and also it is a major distraction. I think one study showed that a typical middle school student is checking their cell phone every 3 minutes while they're trying to study. So that's a distraction. When you look at the diagnosis of ADHD, it doesn't say what is it that's causing the distraction. Just, are you distractible? And so
we all are, right?
Yeah. We all know. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, go drive. I mean, it's insane out there on the road. Let me just say, I feel like either people are looking at their phone or people are on some kind of, benzodiazepine. But people are just not paying attention to the road.
Well, I remember this one time I was walking and I was at a stop sign, which means the person driving was supposed to stop, and I was walking across, and I just watched a car, and I could see because it was right in front of my face. They drove through a stop sign while they were looking at their phone, and I saw this whole thing from close up, and I was almost its victim, and I just thought, oh my God, they can't, you're driving through a stop sign while you're texting. It was crazy.
It's terrifying. It really is. And of course, so you have so you're seeing people in your office, you feel like they really are, they really should be on medication, or I was so drawn to, sorry, I'm kind of jumping around, but it just makes me think, I was so drawn to your chapter, particularly after this recent trip and being in nature and how majestic it is and how it makes you look at your iPhone and think this is so nothing. This is like such a stupid thing to be looking at when you can be looking at the water, the sky, mountains, trees. And it seems to me that so much could be changed, not using medication, but just creating or designing your day a little bit differently, or do schools need to, for kids, do schools need to be doing things differently? I mean, is all of this look, technology is great, and there's really there are a lot of really positive things about it. So I'm not trying to be like this dinosaur who's saying, "Oh, technology's awful," but are there things that we should just be doing, that parents should be doing, that adults should be doing for themselves, that adults should be helping children with?
Absolutely, and I also just want to take a step back and say, I don't make any recommendations whether people should or should not take medication. What I really say is whether you take the medication or you don't take the medication, what you need to do is focus on the gift. But absolutely, I've had clients say, if I spent an hour in nature every day, my whole life would be different. And not all of us, most of us don't have an extra hour a day to go spend in nature. But the fact is that research has shown that even a 15-minute walk in nature changes the brain in really powerful ways. The research suggests that your attention span is longer, that a very recent study showed that people stop ruminating after a 15-minute walk in nature. So these are very powerful effects. And actually, one study showed that in Norway, where their school system is they go in the classroom for 45 minutes, and then after that they have 15 minutes of outdoor play. And that's just the way that their whole day works, that they have the highest math scores, and that they also have, they're usually in the top 5 of, just the general literature test taking.
Wow.
And so we know that, and there's lots of reasons to think that spending time in nature is good. Just in the same way as if you were to be lifting weights, would you want to lift weights nonstop, or do you need to take breaks in between your reps? Everybody knows. And it's the same way with the brain, that it needs those moments of unfocus in order to go back to focusing, to lifting weights mentally.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to take a short break and we'll continue this conversation. You're listening to my chat with Laura Honus Webb, PhD. The book is The Gift of Adult ADD. Stay tuned. We'll be chatting more in just a few minutes.
You're invited to join Michelle Skeen, psychologist, author, and host of Relationships 2.0 on this station. On Michelle's radio show, she has guests who present their unique perspective and expertise on topics that cover all aspects of relationships. If you want to improve your relationships, and let's face it, we all have room for improvement, tune in to Relationships 2.0 with Dr. Michelle Skeen. If you missed Michelle's show, or if you're interested in listening to past podcasts, you can go to her website at www.michelleskeen.com. That's www.michelleskeen.com. So listen to Michelle's podcast, or keep listening right where you're at. Relationships 2.0. Tune in and improve your relationships.
Hey, what's up? Thinking about you. XOXOXO. Want to snuggle. ... JK. Hit me back. You getting these texts? ? We should hang later. I miss you. Holla at ya, boy. Holla back. Holla back. Holla back. Are you at home? Where are you? What are you doing? OMG. You are making me mad. Are you with your ex? You better text me back. I'm waiting outside your house.
Relentless, aggressive texting is like sending an angry robot to deliver your message. When does the robot become dangerous? Let us know at that'snotcool.com.
That's not cool.com.
Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Do you tend to overreact and let your emotions rule your interactions with others? Do you become defensive or find it difficult to see things from another's point of view? You're not alone. Despite the fact that we all have to deal with people in our daily lives, many of us have difficulties with interpersonal relationships. My suggestion? Pick up a copy of the Interpersonal Problems Workbook. This workbook combines powerful evidence-based techniques for strengthening relationships in all areas of your life, whether it's at home or work, with a significant other, a parent, or your child. To find out more about the Interpersonal Problems Workbook, go to www.michelleskeen.com. That's www.michelleskeen.com. Pick up a copy and improve your relationships.
Welcome back to Relationships 2.0. I'm chatting with Laura Honus Webb, PhD, author of The Gift of Adult ADD. Before we jump back in, let everyone know how they can find out more about you. And this is not your only book, and your other books and everything.
Oh, thank you. I have a website, addisagift.com. addisagift.com, and I have access there to 30 days of free coaching and lots of other great resources. And my other books are The Gift of ADHD, The Gift of ADHD Activity Book, the ADHD Workbook for Teens, and also Listening to Depression.
Nice. Oh, good. You have a different website than the Visionary Soul website then that's on the book, right?
Yeah, I do have it, visionarysoul.com. There's also some information there about my private practice.
Okay, but ADD is a gift is the way to get to you as well. One of the things that I highlighted in the book was that people can spend a lot of time and energy trying to fit in when they have this diagnosis, and that can be really frustrating and debilitating in its own way.
Right. And I think that mentality comes, from school, that there's only one right way to think and to be. And, really comes to the heart of, I think, the gift of ADHD, which is creativity. And creativity, by definition, means doing something original and different. And so being able to honor that in yourself is really part of the path to healing.
You give some great examples of people in the book. I always like that. And I think that examples always bring information to life. Would you mind sharing some examples of what that looks like in real life with real people?
Of example
of taking of adults going pursuing their strengths and highlighting their strengths in terms of the way they live their lives and their focus in terms of work, whether it's, a specific area or even of their career or even switching careers.
Yeah, I gave the relationship of the fire, or the example of the fire chief earlier. But another example is salespeople. And there's an example of a person there who was great at car sales and ended up going on to own some car dealerships. Yeah. And what he found is he was never a great student. But if you think about it, in sales, what are you doing? You're talking to people. You're being persuasive. You have to have some charisma. And he loved cars. That's all he ever thought about was cars. So now here he was selling cars. And so think about how different that is from the school system for someone with ADHD. Another example is, this is an interesting one, a physical therapist. One of my clients, he got in trouble because he would be talking and moving. So if you like to talk and move, being a physical therapist is also a great job. Some of the other job descriptions, and I actually think being a therapist is a really good job. I sometimes can't believe that that's my job, is to sit there and talk to people all day or listen to people.
Yeah.
And, You know,
Do
and
you
it's not
find
so
it
much.
difficult to, so you say in the book that you have ADD, right?
Yeah.
Do you find it difficult to focus, or is that something that's easy for you because you're with someone different every hour?
That's what I call, you know, my jet stream, where it's very easy for me to be with people and to listen and to talk with them. The hard part is the paperwork. The hard part is the administrative work. The hard part is the organization.
Right.
But for me, you know, everyone has their own area where they're really good at things and it comes easy to them. And for me, that's that jet stream, I call it.
I like that. You also talk about the guy who started Kinko's.
Yeah, Paulo Falia. And he was such a perfect example. I mean, he said that, you know, as an example, he said that the executives at Kinko's said, you have to get rid of the fact that you have the paper clips and the whiteout and all those things, because people just walk away and steal that. And he said, because he had ADHD, but that's why people use Kinko's. They need to be able to finish everything before they leave, or they're never going to get it done. And so he convinced them that that was an important thing. And so he understood the mindset of catering to people who have ADHD, because entrepreneurs, who is a big consumer at Kinko's, often have ADHD. A lot of research has shown that.
That's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you highlight that it's the person with ADD or ADHD has a really creative mind.
Exactly. And a lot of artists are, you know, have ADHD, so much so that it almost seems to be the same thing. And I would say that also, I knew someone that was a department chair in a videography department, and they said it seemed like almost all of their students, you know, had ADHD. I think there is something about videography and the, you know, movies and using images as opposed to words, for example, that also can be really associated with ADHD. And it's also another area with YouTube, for example. A lot of people just go to YouTube and they put in a search item and they get a video instead of getting words to read. And this can be really revolutionary for people with ADHD.
Oh, that's a better way for them to learn?
Exactly, because it's a person, it's moving, it's a picture, and they're not having to read through the words, and it's just a much easier way for them, yes.
So do most people with ADD have a difficult time reading? Is it the sitting still and reading, or? Yeah,
well, a lot of times it's what you're saying. It's kind of the impatience, the hyperactivity, not being able to follow through. It's not interesting enough. There is a significant number of people with ADHD who have dyslexia, but I think, you know, just the impulsiveness.
I was wondering about that, yeah.
Yeah, and just the impulsiveness and the hyperactivity can make it very hard to read.
So you have in your book a list of qualities or elements that adults with ADD typically need. One of them is self-determination. So they tend to be determined, or no? Or you're saying they need this, or they need this to be part of their program?
What I think they need is to be self-determined. And so what I mean by that is they don't like people telling them what to do, right?
I see.
Big surprise. Okay. And so
right.
This is a quality that when a kid is in school, he gets in trouble for being self-determined. No, I don't want to do that right now. But if you think about it, that is also a quality of leadership. It's also a quality of people who, once they get out of the school system, can really be more successful. You know, there's an epidemic that you read about in the magazines of, you know, kids going to college and their parents calling up and talking to all their teachers because those kids can't fight
the
for
helicopter
themselves.
Parents.
Mm-hmm. And so self-determination is the opposite of that. It's like, if I got a problem, I'll figure it out. I'll solve it.
Mm-hmm. But you probably do see a lot of parents who intervene if they're viewing this condition their child has as a weakness.
Yes. And, you know, I actually, in my book for children, I actually recommend that parents do become advocates. And that's because the model, of course, that exists is that this is a deficit, this is a disorder, and the parents need to get in there and help the teachers to find the positives in their kids. And, there's a story that Michael Phelps, but had ADHD, and he is the, gold medalist in swimming.
Right.
And his mother talks about the day, and can you imagine this, world-class Olympic medalist in a classroom? He couldn't sit still. And so his mother went in there, and he said to the teachers, what are you going to do to support him? And she really challenged them, rather than putting it back on him, like this is a deficit disorder and it's all his fault. And, she said, okay, so what are you going to do to support him? And I do encourage parents to do that. Now, of course, when we're talking about when the kids go away to college, that's the time when the kids need to learn to advocate for themselves.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine, are you seeing that schools are just so much more aware of this now, that they have increasing populations in their classrooms?
Yeah. And what's interesting is even at the elementary school level, kids will talk about, oh yeah, so-and-so has ADHD. So the kids know about it. The teachers know about it. As you said at the beginning of the conversation, it's almost a fad. And so, yes, there is a lot of awareness about it. And I think that the piece that's missing is this is also a gift. And sometimes it just comes down to letting them be evaluated in a different way because they tend not to be good test takers.
Right. There's this section in the book that I just love the way you said it so much. I highlighted it about when you're talking about that people can feel like they're really different when they're struggling with this. If you feel ashamed or embarrassed about some difference, follow this feeling to its source. Elaborate this difference precisely. How do you act differently, feel differently, think differently, or see the world differently? The answers to these questions may contain the very seeds of a creative contribution that will make a huge difference in the world. That's so wonderful.
Thank you so much for that. And, I also share in that section that I remember when I was in my clinical training and we had what was called case conferences, which you've probably had too, where someone would present a case and then all the professors would give their answers to what happened. And I always had this feeling like I can't buy into this because it's so negative. And I could see, these people who've gone through all these tragedies, they were making all these judgments about, and I thought, it just seems so discouraging. It's a simple idea. Are you encouraging a person or are you discouraging a person? Yeah. And it was really that fundamental discomfort I had where I was not on the same page as anyone in the room that really became what is the gift of ADHD.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah, I agree with you. And I don't know if I have ADD, but I totally agree with you. Well, I think the whole process of getting your doctorate in psychology is kind of insane anyway.
Right.
But that's just such a beautiful series of sentences that you put together there. And I think that I say that in part because I think so often if we have any feelings of shame or embarrassment that we want to do everything we can to avoid it and avoid the source of it. And yet, I always say to people, you really need to identify the source of your suffering before you can, end your suffering. And, I just love what you said there. I think your book is really, really inspirational. One of the things you talk about in your book and in the chapter about nature is just this whole idea. I mean, it comes up other times in your book, but this whole idea of being curious.
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead. Say more about that and how that's helpful.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, when you go to school, what they want to do is to give you the answers. And they're not really nurturing and fostering creativity because, again, it comes back to there's a test that people have to take, and if you don't do good on those tests, there's consequences. But curiosity is, I think, what is the foundation of love of learning. So, so for example, if you're learning about photosynthesis and you're a little kid, you might think, well, what happens on a cloudy day? Or how does this get through? Or you might think, well, that's just amazing. It just seems like, that you have this whole cycle of life where the sunlight comes in and it changes everything. And you might be marveling at sort of the process of nature. And this is very different from, okay, I've got a test on Thursday. I've got to memorize all these facts.
Right.
And I think the people that go on to be lifelong learners are really the people who are following their curiosity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, the earlier that we can introduce that or encourage that in our children, right?
Exactly.
Rather than discouraging it. No. Don't ask questions about that. Like, that's not what you're supposed to memorize for school.
Right, exactly. And encouraging those questions. Or, even for people with younger kids, sometimes it's about, letting your kids make messes. I remember sometimes when my kids were young and they would be playing in the sink and throwing a bunch of stuff in and seeing what happened. And I thought, okay, they're doing chemistry, and I let them keep going. I wasn't worried about the messes because they were curious. They're like, what happens when you throw this in? What happens when you throw that in? And so I think as a parent, it's also about stepping back and letting them figure things out that seem, which are, of course, obvious to us.
Yeah. And then, of course, as an adult, accessing the child in all of us that is always curious. That child who asks you, the 4-year-old who never stops asking you questions, right? Why is the sky blue? Oh, why are the clouds white? Oh, why We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. You're listening to Relationships 2.0. My special guest is Laura Honus Webb, PhD, author of The Gift of Adult ADD. Stay tuned.
America's wounded warriors are coming home. After serving on foreign shores, these brave men and women are returning to their families and communities. Many have wounds you can see, and many have wounds you can't see, like post-traumatic stress disorder. Now that these warriors are back home, they are ready to enter the civilian workforce. To help, Wounded Warrior Project has developed the Warriors to Work program, a career counseling service that helps warriors translate their military experience to the civilian workplace. These extraordinary men and women bring proven world-class job skills and a unique perspective on teamwork to the job. And to ensure the right warrior finds the right job, Wounded Warrior Project works with employers to find just the right match. When you hire a wounded warrior, you hire an intelligent, talented, and committed new employee. Contact Wounded Warrior Project at findwwp.org. Welcome home the brave.
Do you panic when you don't receive an immediate response to a text, email, or voicemail? Do you become clingy or demanding when you feel someone pulling away? Do you stay in unhealthy relationships because it's better than being alone? Or do you avoid relationships altogether? If you answer yes to any of these questions, you may struggle with fear of abandonment. This fear can trigger intense feelings of jealousy and anxiety that result in unhelpful behaviors that ultimately sabotage your relationships. Psychologist Michelle Skeen's powerful book, Love Me, Don't Leave Me, will help you develop a new perspective about yourself and others, and you will learn to recognize and change the behaviors that are hurting your relationships. You deserve to have closer, loving, and lasting connections. To find out how, go to www.michelleskeen.com. That's www.michelleskeen.com.
When I was diagnosed with breast cancer, both of my daughters were pregnant, and everything I was looking forward to turned into everything I was going to miss. First words, first steps. Today, those babies are 3. I'm with them all the time. I don't know what's next, but I know I'm here today.
A Susan G. Komen grant helped pay for Alanthia's surgery, and today she's caring for her grandchildren. Help save lives. Visit IamSusanGKomen.org. A public service message from Susan G. Komen.
Welcome back to Relationships 2.0. Again, my special guest is Laura Honus Webb, PhD, author of The Gift of Adult ADD. Again, you can find out more about her and her books by going to addisagift.com. One of the things that, well, you have a big headline in your heading in your book that says failure can become freedom. What does that mean for people who have ADD?
Well, people with ADHD are going to fail more than a person who has more inhibition. Because if you think about it, those inhibitions are in the service of protecting yourself from rejection or failure.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And yeah, so the impulsivity and the hyperactivity and the lack of attention create a lot of failure situations. And so think of it almost like exposure therapy, where what has to happen is you get so used to failure, but you're not stopped by it, that what happens is that you can move forward in the face of failure. So many kids today have so much pressure to be perfect that at the very first B that they get, they crumble. The first time they go out in the real world and someone says, I expected you to think for yourself and you're not solving real problems, they fall apart. Whereas an ADHD person has to roll with the punches, so to speak. Another thing is, if you have difficulty paying attention, what does that mean? It means you can only pay attention to what you're already interested in. And so it's the freedom from the things that you weren't interested in anyway. I mean, I think of, at times I spent at work, for example, crunching data. And, I did good enough, but I wasn't my heart wasn't in it. And so I moved on to something else. And so failure in some ways can force you to pay attention to only the thing that you're already interested in. And so it puts you on the track to doing what you're good at.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes total sense.
So think about someone who can just pay attention to everything. They have no idea what to choose to do in life because they're capable of being good at everything.
Right. What are the challenges of having ADD or ADHD and being a parent? Are you seeing mostly that if the adult, I think that, you say in your book that you were finding that a lot of times like an adult diagnosis then makes them look at their child, right? Because it is hereditary?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
In fact, there's some research suggesting that there's a gene that is related to the nomadic gene, which would be the people who used to, be in constant motion searching for new resources, which actually makes a lot of sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I wonder if there's if it has, nature, nurture, right? So is it something, maybe you're born with a predisposition, but then you also have these environmental factors, meaning the influence of your parent who is ADD or ADHD, that would then send you into that area. Do you know what I'm saying?
Exactly. This is a good point, because even if a parent didn't have ADHD, but they couldn't model for you what we would call executive functioning, which means how to inhibit yourself, how to have directed behavior, how to stay focused for long periods of time. We need that modeling, and we need to learn that from our parents and our family. And if we never learn that, we can very much have the symptoms of ADHD, and because we've never seen what it looks like for someone to focus. And I know this one psychiatrist that sometimes when a parent and a child comes in and the parent saying this kid has ADHD, he'll watch the parent and child, and he'll actually prescribe medication to the parent, but not the child, when he sees that the mother is so disorganized that there's no way she could organize her child.
Right, and there's no way that the child's learning how to be organized from the mother, right?
Exactly, yes.
That's very interesting. Yeah. It's easy to see how so many people get on the medication, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and it and I think it's because it is a quick fix. The thing is about it is it actually works. The only problem is, that it it is a medication that you need higher and higher doses to continue to get the same effectiveness over time. But there's no, I mean, the Ivy League students during finals week who are trying to go out and get this medication understand that it works. So that's that's why it's such a, in some ways, a quick fix, but in some ways, a long-term problem.
It's a long-term problem because oftentimes that's why books like yours are so important. It's not paired with teaching skills or making changes in lifestyle or approaches like you present in your book.
Michelle, I think you just really nailed the whole issue. And I think that the people who kind of get lost in the medication wars miss this point. It's not just the medication, it's what the child isn't getting. And they're not getting the accommodation. They're not getting the building of the self-esteem. They're not getting, the intensive intervention it takes to build executive functioning skills. They're not getting simple things, which could be time in nature. They're not getting, many different things that are lacking. And so you're right, that's it. The problem solving stops when you give someone a medication that temporarily makes them function higher.
Yeah. And so part of them getting better without medication is teaching them how to change their environment to make it more helpful for them. So I would imagine, the nature piece, we talked about that, but also being more organized, right?
Exactly. And, so that's some of the things that it takes a long time to change those things, but you have to start. And it can be as simple as saying, okay, how do you clean up your desk? Okay, you empty out your desk. Then you sort out everything into 2 piles, save and don't save. Okay, throw don't save into the wastebasket. And so, of course, I can keep going like that, but you really have to walk them through step by step. Because keep in mind, one of the symptoms of ADHD is you get distracted. So a child goes to clean out their desk. Okay, well, I empty out my desk. And now they have all these piles, but they don't go on to the next stage. What should I save and what should I not save? And they walk away and they've got just piles everywhere. So it really takes a lot of intervention to make those changes.
So when you're doing your therapy, or as you mentioned, when you were talking about your website that you have like 30-day coaching or whatever, what does that look like?
Well, I think for me it starts with some basics, and one of them is massive action, because it is so important to begin to redefine yourself by your strengths, but you cannot get over this idea that it's going to take work. And that's one of the things that I see is that ADHD kids will lose their motivation and they will lose their persistence. And all those things still need to be in play. And so I will encourage them, you have to study on Saturdays if that's what it takes. So I don't want to promise any shortcuts just from defining yourself by your gifts. And then, but importantly, once a person does realize what they are doing is right, and that they have some strengths, and that there is hope for being very successful in the real world, even if they weren't a good student, then what can happen is they get motivation and persistence. Because now they have ambition, and that is even more powerful than motivation. So those are the kinds of things that become really, a high priority in the therapy. And also, as I think you write a lot about, is the importance of emotional intelligence. Teaching kids, part of alleviating the impulsiveness is know when you're angry. A simple thing I might do is to tell someone, if they're really angry at someone, the first question they should say is, what did you mean by that? Because an impulsive person, if they feel offended, obviously the person meant it that way. So saying, well, what did you mean by that exactly? So you're giving them that moment to try to hear another person's perspective rather than lash out in anger.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So great. I'm so happy that you're out there doing this kind of work. It just feels, it feels fresh to me.
Thank you. I wish, that it was more, that it to me, honestly, it feels like common sense. So, when I
Right.
still bump up against people that are so discouraging about ADHD, and I just want to say there are people out there who say, if you knew my mother or if you knew my child or you knew the person I'm married to, you would never, ever say that ADHD is a gift. But the point is this, it's an intervention in addition to a description. Anytime you encourage someone, you're going to get better results than when you discourage someone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think that the reason that, your message resonates so much with me. I was thinking about this when I was driving today, and I was thinking about your book, is because the glass is half full. I'm not the glass is half empty. I mean, I agree with you that, this isn't great, but we all get dealt some hand that isn't great. None of us are perfect, but there's so much to be learned from that.
And I liked what you said about we're all dealt a hand. If nothing else, the gift of ADHD is this is the best way to play your hand. This is your playbook if you've got a bad hand.
Yeah.
So that's a great way of thinking of it.
Yeah. And how are you able to, is it difficult when you're dealing, well, I was going to ask you about kids, but then I started thinking like adults can get so kind of, down on, their life and kind of the hand they've been dealt, that I'm wondering if it isn't more difficult for you sometimes to get them to figure out their passion than it is when you're working with kids. I mean, I guess they both probably have their challenges, but do you use different methods for children versus adults when you're trying to get them to direct toward, the positive aspects of their diagnosis?
Well, yes. A lot of times with kids, I have to intervene with the parents rather than the kids. I remember a parent looking me in the eye and saying, my child can do anything they want in the sciences. And they really felt like they were just setting their child free into the world. But that child wasn't interested in science. And so in terms of, teenagers or kids, parents can have incredibly narrow ideas of what's acceptable. Like I will often say to parents, do you know that colleges have majors called parks, recreation, and tourism? There's jobs out there for people who want to be outside, who want to be active, who want to be talking to people who like recreation.
Yeah.
And, and just kind of trying to open it up for the parents. Now with adults, it can be easier because generally they don't have to go through the school system. And so they have more choices and options. But as you said, they may have more limiting beliefs. And so then you're working with those limiting beliefs and helping them to overcome it. And it can look more like coaching sometimes than therapy.
Right. Oh, I'm sure. Well, this has been such a treat. Again, it's so great that you're doing this work. Find out more about Laura and her books by going to addisagift.com and keep up the great work. And I'd love to have you back because you have some other books. I'd love to continue this conversation.
Oh, I'd love to come back, Michelle. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for joining me.
Okay, take care.
Bye. Bye, everyone. I'll be back next week. Be well.
This is KCAA Loma Linda, the station that leaves no listener behind. CNBC News is next, a courtesy of buysellmakeoffer.com, where you can post a video about items you have for sale. Sign up now. It's free.
Stocks end a little lower today, hurt by a big 6% sell-off overnight in Chinese stocks and a sharp drop today in shares of Walmart following a weak earnings report and a cut to its full-year profit forecast. The Dow fell 33 points, the Nasdaq down 30.